together so that you can force the system to change.
Great, thank you. And next up, I want to take a question from Bakir. So if you'd like to unmute, tell us where you're joining from and what is your question?
Greetings, Professor. Thank you for your precious lecture. So my name is Bakir. I'm from Russia. I'm a recent University of London graduate. And I have two questions. So one of the question is, and how do you think we can tackle the problem of poverty? And like I set this problem as my goal in life because I come from a very poor region in Russia, like the poorest region. And I've been trying to tackle this problem for many years, but I cannot find any like viable solution. And the second problem, the second question I have is how to affect the people in power to make the necessary changes, to make necessary decisions, because I have been socializing with people like religious leaders, political leaders, businessmen, and no projects that I've been offering them to implement, they couldn't be accepted. So I decided to go into like investment banking, venture capital, to get the grasp of the power of to like financing those projects myself. But it's not an easy path to follow. So like,
Yep.
so yeah.
Okay, difficult questions. I don't pretend that I'm going to be able to address them and solve all your problems. As you said, those are, wicked issues that require all of our energy and know-how and investment. So a few things. I gave the example of Vera Cordero, like I just want to sort of go back to, she wanted to tackle the issue of extreme poverty in the poorest communities in Brazil to help save the lives of the kids who would die because of that extreme poverty. And I want to talk again about what she did, the multidimensional intervention. If there's one critical thing we've learned about how to fight poverty is that it has to be multidimensional, that you have to make sure that you work with people on issues related to employment, to citizenship, to education, healthcare, right, and so on. Now, when it comes to my own angle, which is power, and we talk about that extensively in the 5th chapter of the book, we too often across societies across the world come up with a narrative to justify the fact that the existing distribution of resources and power is actually just. So you do hear narratives that are the kind of narratives that are like, oh, these people are where they are and they are poor because they deserve to be poor, which is just like something we have to debunk. The reality, as we know, is that the existing power structures make it almost impossible and very hard for people to get out of the situation in which they are. And so it's critical that we debunk that narrative. We help people understand the structures of power that exist. And we help think about the multidimensional interventions that will enable the redistribution of resources. Because it's about power. It's about giving access to resources to people who don't have access to these resources, right? And so it's critical to think about that in such a way. And so that requires power sharing. I work with a lot of social change makers across the world who've made, just like you, trying to address poverty across the globe, the core of what they do. And at the core of what they do is power sharing. It is working with the populations in need to give them the tools, the resources, so that they can themselves then come up with the solutions that they need. So one thing I've done is the critical importance of proximate leaders, the people who experience those issues themselves, who can then be given the tools so that they can work with their communities to together find the solutions and work to sort of build the power they need to address those issues. So, and again, happy to connect you through the Social Innovation and Change Initiative to a number of those change makers we've been working with among our students and among the more advanced ones as well. I hear you on, we're back to how do you influence the people in power, right? And I'm going to go back to what I said. There's not much we can do alone, but there's a lot we can do together, right? A lot we can do as voters, but you're going to tell me, well, there are countries where, the voting system is not the kind of voting system that enables you to put pressure, because the truth is that the people in power are dictators and will be reelected and so on. And there are countries where it's not the case. But even in those situations, it's all about the power we can build together so that those in power cannot ignore us anymore. Now, I hear your point on, then it's really difficult because there is a need for resources and there's a scarcity of resources. And then you're telling me now, that's why I'm turning to venture capital and to all of those different options to try and gather the capital to make the change happen. There, I would say, let's be careful. The reason is that if you ask me, I think our economic system needs to change. The issue we have is an issue of excessive power concentration, right? Why do we have such level of inequalities? Because the neoliberal system has evolved over the past 50 years, enabling a minority to get ultra rich while others have not been getting anything. The risk with saying I'm going to become one of those ultra rich and then I will redistribute is that, let me tell you, we do not have a lot of examples of people who've really done that. And even among the people who've really kind of done that, they've been signing a pledge and etc. The reality is that, they still pick whatever they're going to pay attention to. This is not very democratic. It raises a number of issues. So I'm saying we need to tackle those issues. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying if you go do it, please think about how you can reform venture capital to make it more mindful of social and environmental issues as well as financial ones. I think this is what your generation cares about. So let's not forget that, because it is critical. And I heard you, I think this is what you want to do. And if this is what you want to do, I would say absolutely, absolutely. This is a key turning point. We need to change all of these industries. They need to be more socially minded, more environmentally minded. I'm not saying you shouldn't make profit. This is critical too. You need to, but it's about how we distribute the wealth. It's about how we also protect the environment. And I know it is hard to make that happen. I know it's a kind of change that's very hard to implement because our capitalist system is very rooted in certain practices. And what you're going to go and push for are major divergent changes that break from the norms. So I'm saying that it's a double then kind of path and quest you're on, right? Thinking about how you can gather resources to help address poverty, but as you're doing that through venture capital or some of those finance work, it's about changing those as well so that we can address these issues. I think it's important, but as you follow that path, it's important to make sure you're not swallowed by the beast and becoming one of the people who just reproduces the status quo.